Jesse Harding Pomeroy, the youngest murderer in American history, spreading terror and fear wherever he went. The question arises, why would a 14-year-old boy be dubbed the Red Devil by the entire nation? Step into the blood-soaked and mysterious investigation of a young serial killer and witness the horror of a child of the devil. Under the ominous skies of Boston, where dim lights and shadows color the streets, there exists a dark mystery, a chilling story of cruelty and malice. In a world of intrigue and mystery, emerges a figure, a specter with the appearance of an innocent teenager, but the soul of a demon. That figure is Jesse Harding Pomeroy, the rise of the bloodthirsty murderer, a journey into the darkness of the human mind, where wickedness and hell are etched in every cut and scream. Jesse Pomeroy was born into a working-class family in Boston, Massachusetts, on November 29, 1859. His father, Thomas Pomeroy, was a veteran of the American Civil War, and his mother, Ruth, worked as a shipyard laborer and seamstress. He had an older brother, Charlie Pomeroy Jr., who was 2 years his senior. The Pomeroy family lived in extreme poverty in one of the most deprived slums in Boston, in Chelsea. Jesse's childhood was far from peaceful, as his right eye had a white film resembling a cataract, which made him a target for bullying and ostracization. Additionally, Jesse was intellectually challenged, physically larger than his age, and had a cleft lip, as well as periodic epileptic seizures. Jesse endured abuse at the hands of his alcoholic father, Thomas, who regularly beat him with a belt whenever he skipped school. It wasn't until Jesse's mother discovered this mistreatment and angrily drove his father out of the house that the abuse stopped, with Thomas never returning. The only solace, or at least understanding, in Jesse's life came from his mother, Ruth Ann Pomeroy. She believed that her son's issues stemmed from being bullied. If others stopped bullying him, he would stop bullying others. However, this action seemed too late to prevent the negative influences already ingrained in Jesse's mind. Enduring the painful and harsh memories of his father, along with the loneliness and instability of his living environment, Jesse developed cruel and violent behaviors. When left alone at home, Jesse found pleasure in torturing animals. On one occasion, his mother found 2 birds decapitated in the house, and he even tortured a neighbor's cat with a knife. Even as he began torturing and killing small animals, Ruth Ann still saw it as a sign of his distress. Jesse Pomeroy began his wicked deeds when he was just a tender age, around 11 or 12 years old. In the years 1871 and 1872, he roamed the streets as a sinister shadow preying on the innocent. Jesse Pomeroy set traps and attacked 7 boys, all of them younger and smaller than himself. In each case, he led each individual to secluded places, where he stripped the victims naked and bound them. In the beginning, he attacked by brutally hitting, punching, and kicking until the victims were covered in bruises. But as his darkness deepened, Pomeroy then became more cruel, tying up his victims and hitting, cutting, and prodding them with the knife. Pomeroy's brutality instilled fear, leaving whispers of horror in its wake. After one of the surviving victims provided information, he was apprehended and convicted. These vile deeds etched his name into the annals of infamy, marking him as one of the earliest known child criminals in America. Pomeroy's first human victim was 4-year-old William Payne, who was found in an isolated outhouse of Powderhorn Hill in the winter of 1871. The 2 guys heard the poor boy cry near where they were sawing wood. He was hanging from the ceiling by a rope tied to his wrists, semi-undressed, and suffering from hypothermia. He had been hit repeatedly with an unconfirmed blunt object. This horrifying discovery shocked the community, raising questions about how such a young child could meet such a tragic fate. It was a deeply distressing event that left a lasting impact on those involved and the wider community. In the following months, 3 more young boys announced that they had been lured to the same place by an older boy with brown hair, who fondled himself while he tortured them. In February 1872, a 7-year-old boy named Tracy Hayden was lured to Powderhorn Hill, where he was assaulted by the same perpetrator repeatedly with a rod after being stripped naked and threatened with genital mutilation. When found, Hayden's hands were tied, his body bruised, several teeth and his nose were broken, and his abdomen was swollen. The severity of the attack exceeded what a boy of his age could endure, as well as the trauma it inflicted upon him. The boy remembered little about the attacker, only recalling him as a teenage boy with brown hair, which made it difficult for the police. Another attack involving 8-year-old Robert Bobby Meyer occurred in the spring. The perpetrator had promised to take Bobby to the Barnum Circus on May 20th, but instead enticed him to the outhouse, then stripped him, struck him with a stick, and had him repeat curse words. The so-called diabolical miscreant Jesse Pomeroy struck again on July 22nd. He attacked 7-year-old Johnny Balch Pomeroy, promising him 2 pieces of candy in return to complete errands. Like the earlier victims, Johnny had also been beaten, whipping, and bound. In addition, Jesse threatened to murder the youngster if he told anybody. After regaining his strength, Johnny tried to find help before running into the swamps, but Jesse showed there, cleaned his wounds with salt water, and left. The news caused outrage in Boston and prompted police to post a $500 reward for any clue leading to the arrest of the criminal. However, it was misreported that the perpetrator behind the string of tortures was a young adult with red hair and a pointy beard. A description of the boy was then published in the Boston Globe, which was read and recognized by Ruth Ann Pomeroy. Immediately, she moved the whole family to South Boston. Jesse changed location, but he didn't stop committing crimes, and matters grew worse from there. On August 17th, a 7-year-old named George Pratt spent the morning strolling along the seashore. He was promised 25 cents by Jesse to run a task. Pomeroy scratched George Pratt with his nails, stabbed him with a needle, and bit chunks out of his cheek and buttocks, repeatedly stabbed Harry Austin with a pocket knife, and attempted to cut off his private areas. September 5th, less than a month later, Jesse attacked Harry Austin, age 6, hurting and stripping him of his clothes. Instead of doing as Jesse usually did, he attempted something different. He attacked Harry's under his arms as well as between his shoulder blades with a small knife. Then Jesse tried to take off Harry's clothes, but he ran away after getting startled by a bystander. Just 6 days later, 7-year-old Joseph Kennedy was attacked in a similar way. He was tricked into going to a nearby marsh where he was hit and stabbed. Pomeroy made Joseph kneel and say profane travesty of the Lord's Prayer. Then Jesse hurt Joseph's face before taking him to the shoreline and cleaning his wounds with salty water. On September 17th, 5-year-old Robert Gold was found tied to a post by the railroad tracks in South Boston. He was tricked into going there by an older boy who promised to show him soldiers when they were alone. Robert had to go through the same pain as the other kids. After Robert Gold described his attacker as a big boy with a milky eye, the police enlisted Joseph Kennedy to go around Boston's schools as a way to identify the attacker. Pomeroy avoided the police when they came to the school, but later he went to the police station. Even though he left quickly, Kennedy saw him. Pomeroy was then arrested on a nearby street. After spending a night in a cell and being told he might get 100 years in prison if he didn't tell the truth, Pomeroy admitted to all the attacks. He was then sent to live at the State Reform School at Westboro until he turned 18 years old. But instead of staying for 9 years, Pomeroy was let go after only 2 years because he behaved well. The people in charge at the reformatory thought he had really changed for the better. But it turns out this was just a disguise for his true intentions. Just over a month after being released, Pomeroy continued his actions, and Katie Curran became one of his victims. She disappeared after going to buy school supplies at Pomeroy's store. The place was searched, and Jesse was questioned, but nothing was found. After investigation, the truth came to light. On March 18, 1874, while Pomeroy was watching his mother's shop, Katie Curran walked in and asked to buy a notebook. Pomeroy tricked her into going downstairs and began torturing her to see how she would react. Then, he hid her body under a pile of ashes behind the water closet. Then he cleaned up and went back to work. Jesse Pomeroy's mother moved house, and the homeowner decided to do some renovations, including digging up the basement. In the process, they discovered the body of Mary Curran, a previous victim of Jesse Pomeroy. About a week after Katie Curran went missing, the body of Horace Millen, a young boy, was found on the sands of Dorchester Bay. When brought to the police, they discovered Jesse Pomeroy had blood on his clothes, scratches on his skin, and the shoe prints he left matched those found at the scene. This provided crucial evidence to accuse Jesse Pomeroy of Horace Millen's murder and also linked him to Katie Curran's disappearance. Following the discovery of Horace Millen's death, the police quickly narrowed down the list of suspects, and Jesse Pomeroy, known for tormenting children, became the primary focus of the investigation. When arrested, Pomeroy was carrying a bloodstained knife, with mud on his clothes matching the sand where Horace Millen's body was found. He was also wearing shoes with soles similar to those taken from the crime scene. Pomeroy admitted without hesitation that he was the one who killed the 4-year-old. The police questioned him if he was. Direct and unrepentant response further strengthened the sense of the story of Jesse Pomeroy is truly one of haunting and suspicion. People want to understand why a child would commit such brutal acts, and experts have tried to find the answers. Several theories have been put forward, including the possibility that Jesse Pomeroy may have been influenced by a type of familial mental illness. Although thorough investigations were conducted, no traces of illness were found in his family. However, there is information that Jesse's family had many problems, with his parents separated and enduring much physical and mental abuse. This may have created an unstable and turbulent environment for Jesse from a young age. Other theories suggest that Jesse may have experienced violence or bullying, which led him to become violent and intent on killing. Perhaps Jesse felt jealous and abandoned, lacking love and care from both family and society, which could have created a desire for power and control within him. However, no single theory can fully explain all aspects of Jesse Pomeroy's behavior. His story is one of mystery and suspicion, and to this day, there are still many uncertainties about his true psychological and motivational factors. Pomeroy's lawyers employed the insanity defense strategy. They argued that he suffered from a condition known in the 19th century as moral insanity, claiming he was afflicted by an irresistible impulse to torture and kill. They used Pomeroy's own words about being compelled by some force, contrary to his will, to commit acts of torture and murder as evidence of his mental illness. This narrative did not provide a motive, it replaced motive with the notion of illness. The prosecution presented their case based on the legal assumption that all people are presumed sane until proven otherwise. They also encouraged the jury to combine sobriety with foresight, which could have occurred just before the commission of the crime. Because Pomeroy was clearly sober, according to the prosecution, when he lured 4-year-old Horace Millen to a secluded place and beat him to death, he acted intentionally, and thus should be held accountable. As the Attorney General stated in his closing remarks, Pomeroy consistently displayed extraordinary talent and intelligence, and his actions did not fall into the realm of insane behavior, but of wickedness. The jury was swayed by the prosecution's narrative and declared Pomeroy guilty. The judge pronounced his death sentence. At the time of his trial, he was the youngest person in Massachusetts facing the death penalty, making headlines not only on the front pages of court proceedings, but also sparking prolonged debates over whether he truly deserved the death penalty. Ultimately, the governor of Massachusetts commuted Pomeroy's sentence, and he ended up serving more time than anyone else. He entered Charlestown State Prison at the age of 14 in 1874 and died in prison in 1932. For nearly all of that time, he remained alone. Jesse Pomeroy was sentenced to life imprisonment in 1876 when he was just 13 years old. However, his sentence was later reduced. He was held in various facilities, including Charlestown State Prison and Concord State Prison in Massachusetts. He spent nearly 41 years behind bars before being released on parole in 1917 at the age of 55. This was one of the longest sentences in the history of the United States justice system.